Hi, welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm Justin Janowski, your host. I started my business, Faith to Influence, in December of 2018, and I was just hoping to make it. I had a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of self-doubt. God delivered beyond what I could have imagined. I collected over $250,000 my first year in business. I've been able to help and work with so many of the best coaches in the marketplace, Christian leaders who are running 7- and 8-figure business, people like Pete Vargas, Pedro Adeo, Ray Edwards, Dr. Darius Daniels, Dan Miller, John Acuff, Jennifer Allwood, Dr. Shannon Irvin, Nick and Megan Unsworth, and so many more great leaders. And I love sales. This is the goofy thing about me. I'm one of those rare coaches who loves sales. I love business design, offers, pricing, high integrity sales that are also high converting strategies. And in this podcast, I help people with all those things along with mindset around sales and money, because I know in many cases that's what needs to shift. Oh goodness, I better not say those words too fast. This is gonna get crazy. But that's what needs to shift to help people get the results that they want. Thank you for listening in to the podcast here. Today, I want to talk to you about the compounding effect. And specifically, I want to talk to you about a compounding effect in business. This is very similar to compounding interest in the investment market. If you've invested before, you've probably heard about the way it works, and you've heard about these rules of, like, if you just invest over and over and over for an extended amount of time, the same amount of money again and again and again, it's not an addition. At some point, there becomes a massive multiplication, and the result is so significant over time. This is like true of the book Atomic Habits talks about this, and there's many other sources of this idea that the same thing repeated again and again and again and again and again initially seems to have an incremental difference or an incremental effect that's small and micro, right? But then eventually repeated enough, the massive effect becomes evident. Things like flossing your teeth. There was this book I read called The Slight Edge. It also talks about this idea of compounding. It would say, if we could just get the slight edge again and again and again and again, so slight of an edge that it doesn't seem like anything's different or anything's really happening, that if we get it again and again and again over time, there's a compounding effect to that. And the example that they would give is like flossing your teeth. If you do floss your teeth today, you're not going to notice a massive difference tomorrow. If you don't floss your teeth today, you're not going to notice a massive difference tomorrow. In fact, there will probably not be a single day of flossing your teeth that shows you a true and dramatic difference in your smile and your dental health from one day to the next. But if you do floss your teeth every day for the next 20 years versus if you don't, the difference between the two is dramatic. It is life-altering, right? And that's the truth about most things that get us the slight edge. Usually they're really easy to do. They only take a minute, like flossing your teeth. But those things that are really easy to do are really easy not to do, like flossing your teeth, right? I've gone through seasons of my life where I've been a great flosser and seasons of my life where I didn't floss at all. Oh boy, don't tell my dentist. I'm better. I'm better now. I'm serious about it because I know that compounding effect. And I want the compounding effect of 30 years from now having been a flosser for 30 years. I want the big impact that's going to come later. And I'm willing to do the work now to receive that compound interest. Just like investing. And just like the things that are important in your business. Here's what I want you to know. If you start a podcast this week, if you start recording your own podcast, it's not probably going to lead to any sales the first month. It probably won't lead to any sales the first 6 months unless you've already got a massive following that's just like waiting for you to launch your podcast. For most new coaches, 6 months of consistent podcast episodes every single week will lead to no new business. I know, you might not want to hear that. It's the truth. For most new coaches, 1 year of a new podcast every single week is going to lead to very little or no new business. But if you release a new podcast episode every week for the next 10 years, you will at some point experience a massive compounding effect of that effort, and results will be coming in before you know it. Dan Miller taught me this lesson more than anyone else. Dan ran a podcast where he released an episode every single week for 20 years. Dan also released an email newsletter every single week for 20 years. Neither one of these things, the newsletter or the podcast, was like dramatically flashy or the most impressively produced thing you've ever seen in your life. But what Dan was consistent and dependable and reliable, and he showed up consistently again and again and again and never missed for 20 years. And he had a 7-figure business, and he had so many loyal followers, and most of his business came from his podcast and his email newsletter because it was a compounding effect. For me, when we started the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast, it didn't produce any new sales the first few months. It took several months before we started to have people reach out occasionally for conversations because of the podcast. Now, a year and a half in, it's starting to happen more regularly. We're having people send me emails and ask me questions and engage me because they've been loyal listeners to the podcast and they're finally ready for help. And they get on calls with me and we make easy, fun sales with super ideal clients. And it's because of the compounding effect. There's this idea that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And it's true. Because oftentimes we don't see the early stages of the compounding effect at play. We see it when it happens, when it pops, and it's like, oh my gosh, you just came out of nowhere and it just like blew up this business or this influencer or whatever it might be. And it might seem like that at the surface level to the outside world, but we didn't see all the early stages of that, all the early steps. And so I just want to encourage you in this. I want you to consider how different might your business be 10 years from now if you release one YouTube video a week. How many your subscriber count's not going to grow on day one. And if it does, it'll look like a snail's pace. It'll be really small. It could even be discouraging. Don't even look at the numbers the first days if you don't want to. But if you release a new episode every day or every week in YouTube, you're going to eventually have a compounding interest kind of effect. I know a coach who released a new YouTube video for like 5 minutes. It was like on chronic illness and chronic healing. It was like a 5-minute YouTube video every day for 4 years. And he had a $18,000 monthly recurring revenue business with every single sale coming for free from YouTube. And it didn't start out like that on day one. But after he did it day after day after day after day, all of a sudden there was a moment where it popped. And the compounding effect was at play, and he got a ton of results. And then it became really easy. And then once you had the momentum of the pop on the other side of the compound interest, that moment where all of a sudden the difference is seen and felt and experienced, there's a momentum from that. It's going to keep going. And so for him, it was YouTube. For some people, it's a podcast. You know what one of the simplest, easiest ways to get compound interest is in your business? It's to prospect consistently. Imagine this. Imagine if you just send one prospecting message a day, every working day for the next several years in your business. Just one. You found one person in the world to invite to a call Monday through Friday. You'd be sending 5 messages a week. You might not get any results the first few weeks in your business. You're new to sales. Maybe your skill set hasn't developed yet. You just need the repetitions of having conversations. Maybe you're not really great at asking. You don't know how to do it very well. Maybe you're not having that many calls. And maybe when you get to the call, you're afraid of sales and making your offer. And maybe the results don't come immediately. Prospecting is the example that could actually produce an immediate result. But if it didn't, imagine that you sent 250 messages inviting people to a conversation this year. That's just one a day, Monday through Friday, 50 weeks of the year. One message. That's it. But then let's compound that a little bit. Let's say you did it for 2 years. Now you've sent 500 invitations for people to get on calls with you. What if you did it for 10 years? After 10 years, you've sent 2,500 messages inviting people to conversations with you. How many clients do you think you've had after 2,500 invitations to calls? How good do you think your skill set at sending that message is after 2,500 attempts of it? How good do you think your sales process is after countless sales calls at that point? How many testimonials do you have? How many referrals have you gotten? How much more confident are you? Everything dramatically will change at some point if you just did that one thing of sending one invitation a day to a conversation. It could be that simple. The same thing is true for almost anything you can imagine doing in your business. Now, there might be some things that you're doing that are not going to yield compound interest. Maybe you're using your time in a really poor way, and you need to change the way you're spending your time. Maybe you're on activities that aren't going to help. But if you want to play some of these long game activities, it can be frustrating for many people in the beginning to see that they're not getting results immediately, and they'll give up too soon. My encouragement to you is understand the compounding effect and keep going. Be consistent above all else and play the long game. And know that 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, at some point, you're going to hit a tipping point and have a dramatic change in your business and your life because of the compounding effect of all the hard work. Just do it again today. Just do it again next week. Just do it again the week after that. And trust that it's coming. Enjoy the compound interest. I can't wait until you're an overnight success and to hear about all the years of work that went into that big moment and that big break. God bless you all. Have a great week. I'll talk to you more soon.